I don't think it's easy to let go of the person that you knew your entire life, that was there for you and cared for you. They're always in your heart. They're always with you. Those little things that they did or those moments that you shared, they'll always be there. And letting go of them in their physical form, that person who they were, it's part of letting go, but it's never the end. I think, was I hiding him? I don't think so. I think it was just my own coping mechanism to try to live a quote-unquote normal life. That relief for him also became a relief for myself, to know that this role that I had played for so long was not something that I had to bear anymore.
How would you cope with caring for a dying parent for 12 years? Welcome to the X Perspective podcast. I'm your host, Raj, and this is episode 20. In her early 30s, Joanne Narksompong, an American Thai expat, faced one of the greatest challenges of her life, and it lasted for 12 years. Now, if you really want to understand Joanne's story, you need to know this. She absolutely admired her dad. Not only did she love him, but she idolized him. And so when her dad became sick, she had to come to terms with letting go and accepting the fact that her dad was no longer the person she knew. How do you deal with such a reality for so many years, watching the person that you love slip away? Now come with me and let's start by taking a closer look at Joanne's relationship with her dad. What was your relationship like with your dad prior to his illness?
Basically, I've always lived apart from my father until I was about 25. So I lived in America with my mother, and my father lived in Thailand. So I only really saw him during the summers, and it was this kind of special time with us in Thailand, southern Thailand. He would take me abroad to like Hong Kong, Malaysia, Singapore. He was the fun guy. And then when I finally was living with him in my 20s, and up until he passed, it was a different relationship. He was always kind of like my go-to. I was always daddy's little girl. Even as I was an adult, we respected each other. As I was an adult child and living in the home, I was always having a closer relationship to him than my mother.
So you were close to him?
Very close, yeah.
You told me earlier that you idolized your dad.
Very much so.
Why is that?
He had this like bigger than life personality. He had his bad points, but he was really kind of generous in his own way. He was hot-tempered, and I think that's from his southern Thai side. But he was very generous in terms of like gifts or trying to get things that made you happy. Like he would know the kind of food that I liked and he would buy that, or he would take me to places that he knew I enjoyed. And it always seemed like he had a special place in his heart for me.
Can you describe to the audience what happened to your dad in 2012?
At that time, he was in his early 60s, still a very vibrant man who liked to garden, liked to travel, do road trips. And suddenly we felt that he was getting really angry or frustrated, especially with driving. And then we came to realize he was having issues with his vision. And we thought there was something kind of strange with that. And we found out later he had a mini stroke. With taking the MRI and finding out from the doctors that he basically was losing his vision, which was affecting his ability to drive. And he was a person who loved to drive. He drove fast, he drove well, but we sensed that his frustration was that he could no longer drive as he had been. And when we tried to tell him he couldn't drive, he became very, very angry. Until one day he realized himself that he couldn't drive. And he kind of relinquished that ability to others, basically. We found out that his ability to walk was reduced, his verbal language, even, like I said, he was very angry. And later on, we did find out that he had Parkinson's, and it was type of Parkinson's that had this additional element of irritability to it.
Joanne, when you found out that your dad had this mini stroke, how did you feel?
I don't know that it really sunk in. It was something that became a very gradual change because we didn't know how it affected him right away. His vision, definitely, his ability to drive, definitely, that was quite immediate. But some of the other effects that, it became slowly revealing themselves. And for us, I think we were just really at a loss on how to deal with his anger. And that anger was there for maybe 2 years before it was diagnosed.
So when you did find out, when it sunk in that your dad was now changing, like you're talking about his anger, how was that making you feel?
I think initially very scared. I'm a pretty calm person. And like I said, he's always been a little bit hot-tempered. And with this kind of irrational anger, it made me very excited in a negative sense, like anxious. And he became a backseat driver, yelling at people when they were driving, trying to get them to like go faster or things like that. So the initial kind of day-to-day was he was rather irritable. That made us very anxious, trying to deal with his emotions. But over time, I realized that I couldn't talk to him like I had talked to him before. And he wasn't the person that I knew, the person that I had trusted, the person that had been my confidant for so many years. I think this, at an eventual point, maybe 6 months in, I realized he wasn't the person he was before.
So you see your father is still alive. And yet he is dying. How were you able to understand that, if you were able to do that?
Initially, in the early years, chronic illness can be years, decades. We never knew when something was going to happen. I think when I finally knew that he was going to pass physically, it was almost a relief, I'm sad to say. But we had dealt with his illness for nearly 12 years, and the things weren't getting better. We knew his quality of life was degrading, and we also knew that no matter what happened at that point, he would not be in a good state of health. So when the end kind of did finally come, it was almost a relief.
Okay, and we'll talk about that later on in more detail. But can you tell us, and you've touched on this, that your dad's health declined over the 12 years. Can you describe in some detail so the listeners can get a better understanding how it gradually declined? I know you mentioned Parkinson's disease. Was there anything else?
He had, before his illness, he had cataract surgery. And in the end, he developed glaucoma. So he had mini stroke, Parkinson's, glaucoma, which eventually led to quite a lot of loss of eyesight. He had high blood pressure, even fluctuating blood pressure, diabetes. So he was on a lot of medication and a lot of issues with side effects between the medication. And this did not reveal itself all at once. It revealed itself over time. And also because he was on certain medication, he later on had kidney issues. What we didn't know was to control certain things, like his high blood pressure, for example, the medication was actually destroying his other organs, such as kidneys. In terms of his health over the years, sometimes he was better. He would be more cognizant. Sometimes he struggled to go to the restroom. He struggled to stand. He struggled to even eat sometimes. Occasionally he would get like kind of these episodes, and then we'd have to go and adjust his medication. So it wasn't a static process. It was something that was always changing. If things stayed the same, it was good. When things something happened, some kind of factor made the issues change, then it had to be recalibrated.
And did that make it harder for you to let go of him? And actually, before you answer that question, can you describe to me what is your definition of letting go of your dad? What does that mean to you?
I think letting go of this particular person, my father, who was someone that I idolized and someone that was larger than life to me and to most people that he knew, I think it was letting go of his identity as that person. And then at certain different points in his illness, accepting him for who he was at that time, who he could be to me, maybe not as a parental figure who cares for me anymore, but still as a person that had value at different stages of his illness. Sometimes, like I said, he was more cognizant, and I was able to kind of see glimpses of that person that he had been, or he would remember things, or he would laugh at things that I said, and that made me miss him even though he was there. So it was quite difficult letting go of him gradually in that way. He wasn't gone, so you couldn't grieve him. I still miss the person that he had been, that he was no longer. And then, at the same time of grieving that person or letting go of that person that he was no longer, I was trying to accept him where he was. And I think as that changed over time, sometimes I would get a hope or a glimpse of the person they had been, and it would give me like a false hope again. But then the reality would set in that he would never be the person that he was.
Did accepting him for how he was becoming, was it getting easier or harder through the years?
I don't think it ever gets any easier. Because we didn't know how long he would be around. So we didn't know if he would be, he could have been in his 80s or 90s. We didn't know. So I don't think it would ever get any easier, even if he was on Earth longer, in his physical form. No, yeah, it doesn't get any easier.
Was there a moment, Joanne, where you really felt that I have really lost my dad? I know it was a gradual thing over 12 years, like you explained, but was there any moment where you felt that?
Yeah, I think there were 2 points. The first point was about 6 months in, like I had mentioned, where I realized that he wasn't going to be that person. Until that point, I maybe had hopes that he would be, or I didn't quite realize, it didn't quite sink in. And the last point was the day before he actually passed, that I realized this was the end.
Now, going back to those 12 years while your dad was sick, were you able to reconnect with him in a different way?
Yeah, it was more of, he was more childlike in his speech, and in his day-to-day was very much eating, drinking water, going to the restroom, this kind of basic function, sleeping. So it was very childlike, and sometimes I would try to make him happy just by buying him something that he had enjoyed, like maybe a snack or a food that he liked. And he would appreciate it, like he would be like, oh, you bought me barbecue pork or whatever. And I think on that level, I became the person taking care of him. I think the one memory that I have of when we connected the most was Actually, about a month or two before he passed, he was in the hospital. He was in the ICU. And I was telling him a story about my students. And he just laughed and laughed and laughed at my story. And I think it had been so long since I had heard him laugh that it's still one of the most poignant memories.
I can imagine.
Yeah. Because he didn't have a whole lot to bring joy to his life, I think, in the later years during those periods.
Were you able to make sense at some point that he was still alive, but he was no longer the same person?
Yes, I think I did make sense of that. It was a challenge at first because you don't want to let go of that person, because he had been my father since I was born, and that, by the time he was ill, that would have been 30 something years that I knew him as that person, this bigger than life personality. And he became a shadow of himself. And for me, I think the sense of it was difficult there wasn't a whole lot of sense making at the beginning, because it was a mostly survival situation, trying to make sure he was cared for, trying to make sure that he went to his doctor's appointments, that he was getting his proper medication. And like I said, he wasn't an easy patient. So a lot of it was survival mode. There wasn't a whole lot of time to reflect. But in the quiet moments, when late at night or when you're driving and when you're by yourself, I think that's when the reality will hit you. And it becomes this really, the reality is quite harsh that he's no longer who he was.
And in those moments, what was the emotion that dominated you?
Sadness, very, very sad, and kind of, like I said, the missing him, even though he was there.
Joanne, how were you able to hold on to the love you had for your dad, but yet at the same time let him go?
I don't think the love was never a question. Letting someone go, especially when they've been ill for so long. And I think knowing him, how he was before, I don't think he would have wanted to be living that life, the life that he would live if he had continued living at the end. I'm referring to at the end. For me, it had reached a point where he would not have wanted to continue. And so letting go of him at that point, although difficult, it was a new reality, a new realization that it was final, the physical form. But, I'm still letting go of him even now.
You're still healing?
Sure, yeah.
I want to talk more, Joanne, about the role of a caregiver. What was it like to take care of your dad for 12 years as he was dying? And I know you mentioned that he was challenging, but what did it feel like for such a long time?
On a personal level, it became my biggest burden in life. It's difficult for me to say that, but the reality was I was preoccupied with home life, what was happening at home. I didn't have a lot of time to go out, socialize. And I think that aspect of my life has made some things pass me by, friendships, relationships, even marriage, children. It's just not something that happened for me, perhaps, in retrospect, because of other things were my priority. But I think being a caregiver for someone that you really, really love, it almost became a responsibility that I felt that I had to take.
Why did you feel like you had to take it?
Mostly because I'm an only child, and my parents had already separated. In that situation, I became the financial caregiver, even though I was not the primary day-to-day caregiver. This responsibility, culturally, it's a very respected aspect of Thai culture as well, that you take care of your parents in their older days. And I don't know how much that influenced my decision to care for him for all those years. But I think the fact is, if he didn't have me, who did he have? There was no option to put him in a home or to put him in somewhere where somebody else was caring for him. We did the best we could for as long as we could.
Did you have a difficult time taking care of yourself over those 12 years?
I would say that most of the time it was very much a survival mode, like I had mentioned. Many times, I didn't get my hair cut for a year or I didn't really care how I looked. Sometimes if he was in the hospital or if he was ill, 7-Eleven was my supermarket. I would say that I didn't really think about myself much. And I think a lot of people that are going through tough situations and they're in this kind of survivor mode, they are in the same situation. Like it's good if they can get out of bed and, take care of that person or go to work. And for me, going to work and being away from the home was actually a way of getting away from this aspect of my life. A sort of escapism, if you will.
Did you tell people at work about your dad's condition?
Not initially, not off the bat, but maybe if we became closer, we became like friends, I would tell people, but I wouldn't reveal a whole lot about what was going on. I might just say, oh, my dad has Parkinson's, something along those lines.
I know that you did your PhD while your dad was sick. Did that help you in any way?
It definitely gave me time out of the house, away from the situation. It gave me a new group of friends that didn't know me and they didn't know my father. They didn't know my background. And so in a way, I could reinvent myself. These people knew me as a student, a fellow classmate. They knew me as a researcher or, someone outside this whole other reality.
And then after you finished your PhD, I know that you started teaching again.
Right.
Did you feel when you were teaching that the weight of what was happening at home, the situation with your dad, did it bleed into your work?
Usually not. I think as a teacher and many other professions where you have to be a little bit of a performer, a little bit of an entertainer, you can for the moment pretend like you're fine.
Was that hard?
It was actually not very difficult at all, because the kids didn't know, and teenagers. I teach high school. Teenagers, they accept you at face value. Most people do. And it's easy to go into a classroom and just do what's expected of you. And, they weren't asking me tough questions about home or anything like that. So it didn't bring those issues up.
And like you mentioned earlier, escapism, it helped you, would you say, just compartmentalize kind of parts of your life, like have a little bit of time away from this very heavy situation that you had been dealing with for years?
For sure, definitely.
So what would you say to people right now, like who might be dealing with someone, a dying parent, and they're taking care of them? How important is it to be able to give yourself the time to maybe get away from that situation without feeling guilty?
I think it's a vital component of not only self-care, your mental health as a caregiver is probably the most important thing. And we don't put enough emphasis into the caregiver. The patient or the person who is ill, they can, they're dealing with their situation in the best way that they can. But the caregiver also, and that guilt, you would feel like, you shouldn't be enjoying yourself. You shouldn't, for example, spend money on something a little bit luxurious, like getting your nails done or getting your hair done, or going out for the evening. And I know it can be similar maybe to people like mothers who have the mom guilt. But for caregiver guilt, because it's it doesn't go away. The person doesn't get any better. The situation doesn't improve. And if it's something long-term, you have to find a way to make it work for you, that you can refill your cup rather than let it be deplenished to the point where you have nothing left for yourself.
Absolutely. Like, how do you take care of someone if you don't have the energy or the right mindset to do so?
Yeah, and it can be simple as playing music. You don't have to even leave the house. Like, I found so many ways, like playing music on my balcony. I'm not much of a dancer, but sometimes I would just do my own, dancing and nobody's watching kind of thing, or taking a walk, going for a coffee. Very simple things where you don't remember for a moment what your reality is, or that you have these very, very heavy burdens in your life. And it doesn't have to be a long time. It can be 5 minutes or, just a quick refresh. I was never one to meditate. I always needed something like music or movement to get me out of a space, like a mental space.
I know you mentioned that there was a year you never got a haircut or you didn't do your nails, but through the 12 years, did you feel guilty overall to take care of yourself, or the way you mentioned how spending some money or just having some pleasures, or were you able to balance it out a little bit?
I think as I initially, I was doing my PhD, so that took a lot of funds, personal savings, and then I was working. And initially we were not in a space to have a lot of additional expenses because he didn't have insurance. So his medical expenses were also on the household. I would say for me, as I was more and more financially able to take a few splurges here and there, it did become better. And he also became more stable as his medication became more fixed with small recalibrations. My work life and social life definitely became something that I valued very much so. And maybe about 2 or 3 years ago, I made it a point to increase my social network, meaning my safety system, my support system in life. And so friendships that had maybe been forgotten or not maintained, I tried to rekindle some of those and make sure that if something happened, I had people to talk to and people to lean on, even if it was just, hey, I need to vent, hey, I need to chat. And it was an intentional thing. I don't think people realize how important, and especially as someone whose family network is primarily in the States, and many times I did feel alone. And so it was really important for me at this later juncture to say, I want solid friends in the vicinity, in the country, in the city, preferably in the same city. And it's not something that you can put a price tag on, but it was invaluable to have someone that you could ring or go have a coffee chat. Before that, it had been a lot of solitary endeavors, like just spending time near the house.
It sounds like that, you weren't paying attention to developing your friendships or your circles there and very preoccupied taking care of your dad. But then what happened? What switched that made you feel that, it is important for me to start investing in friendships and create this kind of environment where I can talk to people? Did something happen?
I would say for myself, I had a few of my own kind of health crises that I realized it was not just my health or my mental health, let's say. It was the fact that I didn't have a support system that was making it even more, making me more vulnerable to having anxiety, for example, or lack of sleep. And I think it was just a constant stress from my home life. And I realized that a friend or a conversation with a friend could be so soothing and calming. And I didn't want to depend on people that were thousands of miles away. If something really happened, who would be there in an hour or half an hour? They couldn't. And I have been in health situations where a family member flew out from the States to help me regain my footing. It was a gradual realization that it was something valuable enough that I needed to make it intentional.
And I'm so happy you came to that realization, because I couldn't agree more. It's so important to have people in your corner when you're going through a hard time. And even if you're not going through a hard time, develop those relationships.
Sure, definitely. And then, like I said, I think it's something very, very undervalued. But for, I consider myself an expat, even though I am a Thai national living in Thailand. I think that's something that expats in particularly, or people living away from their support system, need to try to develop. And as I found out that your friends, when you live in a community like Bangkok, they come and go. Mm-hmm. So it does take a little effort.
Joanne, your dad passed away in 2024, about 2 years ago, from a brain aneurysm. How did that make you feel when he passed?
I think I just felt relief. Not that he was gone, but that his suffering was over. And for me, I felt, initially very, very sad. But I didn't express it. I actually didn't cry at his funeral. I cried the day before he died, because that was the moment that I actually realized that he was not gonna make it. And we knew, but it was to the point where I knew he was gonna pass. And then over time, that relief for him also became a relief for myself, to know that this role that I had played for so long was not something that I had to bear anymore. And even though I was grieving, I was also healing. And the healing, I would say, has been over time, a lot through writing, a lot through expressing how important he was to me, and also expressing some of the moments, just small moments. And I think, like, for me, it's always been, the trips that we took. And we love to eat, so a lot of the food that we ate will bring back memories. He loved Indian food. He loved, we were just saying the other day, oh, he would have enjoyed this, and then you miss him. But for me, it's been very kind of like a rebirth, if I would say, that that role that I played for so long, that person that I, in a way, hid for so long from so many people. A lot of people, when I started writing about my dad, they didn't know. And it wasn't something that I revealed. It wasn't something that I wanted people to know, but it wasn't something that I was hiding. It was just something that I was trying to gloss over. Like, this is, I wanted people to accept me for me, not for this person who was doing this thing, caring for this person. I kind of feel like, was I hiding him? I don't think so. I think it was just my own coping mechanism to try to live a quote unquote normal life without having this shadow over my head.
Like everything you do, you didn't want to have that. When you're talking to friends or colleagues, always constantly be reminded of your situation.
Exactly.
That's what you're saying?
Exactly. I didn't want people saying, like, how are you, in that sad voice, or, how's your dad? Yeah, I think that was my primary reason for not being more open about it. But the support that I got from people when they started to see or hear through my writing or my pictures. I think it was very heartwarming to me to see that I had such good support, both in people that I knew casually and both in people that I knew very well. And they would say, "Oh, I didn't know you were going through that," you know. And they would say, "You're such a strong person." But I never felt that way for myself, actually. I was just doing the things that I needed to do to get through the day.
Joanne, when you look back now, would you have done anything differently to make it easier for yourself to let go of your dad?
I think that I would have been a little bit more understanding to myself. I think I was often very times hard on myself and critical of myself that we weren't doing as good of a job taking care of him as we could have. We had limited resources and time and energy. And I think for me, that it's one aspect that I still feel guilty of. So letting go of him and knowing that we did the best that we could still feels like we didn't do enough. The other thing is, so the first thing is that I think we could have done a little bit more to make his life a little bit more enriching, even though he was in, limited capacity. The other thing is for myself, I think I would have kept more of a meter or a monitor on my own well-being, because I let myself at times get so burnt out that I could barely function. And people did come to my aid and I shouldn't have let it got to that point. So keeping in a monitor on that, and the realization that, I am also important in this whole equation. So if I had known then what I know now, I would have done better by him and by myself. And then it would have felt like letting go of him wasn't as hard. I don't think it would make it easier, but there's a bit of guilt there, maybe even a bit of shame, that we could have done better, or I could have done better.
Explain that to me. You felt like it would have been easier to let him go if you had done more for him?
Yeah. Like if we had afforded better health care, if we would have been able to provide him, more comforts. I just feel it's hard to watch someone who's struggling health-wise. And I think because it was over such a long period, a lot of this is blending together. Mm-hmm. Sometimes he was doing better. Sometimes he would do worse. For example, like a couple months before he passed, I bought him a brand new bed. The bed that he had was sinking on one side because he would sit on the edge of the bed to take his meals and his medication and to drink water. And, he didn't get to use that bed for very long, but, this is just one example of something that I wanted to do for him to make him more comfortable. Mm-hmm. And sadly, he didn't enjoy that thing for very long. Could we have afforded better doctors? Maybe he would have had better standard of living, quality of living. I don't know, but there's no way I can know.
Joanne, obviously, to anybody listening, you have been through a lot. How did this change your character, build your character, shape your character as a result?
I think primarily it's like the song, like what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. For me, I don't think I've been through anything as difficult as this in my entire life. And it became a fundamental defining, time period. Basically my 30s, from 32 to 42, a little bit, maybe 43. I was, this person, and it made me stronger because of it. I learned my capacity. I also learned my limits. I learned who was there for me and who wasn't. I learned that sometimes you have to do what you have to do. Wake up in the morning, go to work, come home, and care for the people you care for. And it becomes something that you do without question. And I learned, like we were saying, the importance of filling my own cup and having my own support network outside of the home. And it was, I think coming out of this time period, I feel like I am taking those lessons forward and moving forward to become a me that doesn't regret the past, but that has learned from it and that will be a better person with those experiences in my pocket.
So how are you feeling today?
I feel good. I was a little bit hesitant to come and talk with you today, but I feel like a weight has been lifted. Not only from talking to you, also over the time that I've slowly processed this letting go and starting to heal. It's been a journey, and I don't think it's over. Somebody told me, and I think it's one of the most important things that I was told, is grief is not linear. And it's not. I've had moments where I did finally cry about his passing to people that I didn't know very well, but that I felt safe enough to cry in public. Because I really am not a small welling in my eyes. It's already a big cry for me. But I I can say that I have expressed and healed. Moving forward, I have hope that I won't have this survival mode. I think it's behind me. And I hope that it'd be in a period where I thrive. And I already kind of feel that momentum from different things that I've been doing, different projects that I've worked on. I think many times in the past, I would try to do extra things outside, to keep myself busy, hobbies and things. But because I was so stretched, nothing ever, it was always kind of like the limit of my energy or the limit of my time. And now I have the ability to devote more time to my projects or endeavors more fully. So I feel that I feel more fulfilled by these activities. Whereas before they had this escapism element, now I'm just doing them because I enjoy them.
That must be a wonderful feeling.
Definitely.
Joanne, what kind of message would you like to say to someone who is living with a parent who is dying and they're having a really hard time letting go?
I feel for everyone who's in this situation. And sometimes the period of knowing that they are going to be gone is shorter than what I experienced. I don't think it's easy to let go of the person that you knew your entire life, that was there for you and cared for you. Oh gosh, I think I would say it's not the end. They're always in your heart. They're always with you. Those little things that they did or those moments that you shared, they'll always be there. And letting go of them in their physical form, that person who they were, it's part of letting go, but it's never the end. I think for me, I feel it, they're part of your DNA. They're part of your history. Maybe just accept them for where they are, appreciate them as much as you can. And yeah, they're with you. They're always with you.
Thank you so much for saying all of that, Joanne. I know it's hard, but thank you. This is stuff that I feel people need to hear because you really went through a lot. And if your story can help anyone, that would be great. What do you wish people understood more about letting go of a dying parent?
To the outsider, I think just be very understanding that we don't know what other people are going through. As a teacher, I know very well that I have in my classroom 30 realities, 30 different, things happening at home, 30 different personalities. And I was always taught to accept them where they are. And I think that's the same for our colleagues, our friends. You don't know if someone's having a bad day. You don't know if someone's having a bad decade. To just take people at face value and sometimes realize it's not you. So if someone acts out a little bit strangely, maybe they're a bit harsh, maybe they're having something really difficult happening at home, maybe they're having a bad day, be understanding. And I think, what did I say? Act of kindness. Sometimes the small acts of kindness could brighten someone's day, make them go from having a bad day to having a good day, or at least, make their mood a little bit better. So I think, for me, I wish people understood that if people are abrupt or harsh, it's not necessarily you, and it's not something maybe they need to share to you, but maybe just accept them a bit more. Because
give them the benefit of the doubt.
Give them the benefit of the doubt. Like what we don't know that's happening at home, or we don't know what's happening in their world. Maybe we don't need to know, but also just accept them as a human who's having a human experience. Yeah.
Joanne, is there anything else you would like to say?
I don't think I expressed how grateful I am to my dad. Without him, I wouldn't be the person that I am.
Thank you, Joanne.
Thank you very much for having me. And yeah, please, anyone who's listening, my heart goes out to you if you're in a similar situation, and take care of yourself.
Beyond the dedication and love that Joanne showed for her dad during his illness, what I really like about Joanne's story is that she gave herself the space to heal and to accept her past. So instead of being weighed down by this difficult period in her life, she decided to adopt a positive mindset and to move forward with her life. I also really admire how Joanne continues to keep her dad close to her heart and cherish the memories they did have together. In closing, I would like to say, there are a lot of lessons we can learn here from Joanne's story. But if I had to choose one, this one would be it. If you're a caregiver, make sure you also take care of yourself. Thank you for your attention and time. If you have enjoyed this episode, please consider supporting us through Patreon or buying us a Thai milk tea. You can jump on over to the X Perspective podcast website and get all the information there. Your support helps us create a platform to share meaningful stories like Joanne's, which I believe are very important. Also, don't forget to subscribe so that you will be notified of new episodes as they drop. Ever get to the end of the month and wonder where all your money went? Well, now there's a free app called Enough Spent. You open it, type what you spent, and you're done. Your coffee won't even get cold. It works in over 150 currencies, which is great if you're traveling, and it works offline too. No account needed, no sign up. If you've ever wanted to track your spending without dealing with some complicated finance app, search for Enough Spent on Google Play. Thanks for being here, and remember, every perspective creates a story. See you in the next one.